everyone, and welcome back to a year in the TikTok of FatdoctorUK. So, I have looked over how many TikToks we have left. I believe there's going to be about 3 more parts to that, including this part. That's my estimate. It could give or take a part. So, currently we are still on September 17th of last year. That is right. We have not we have not made much progress, but from what I can tell, there's a few jumps and it only goes until May. So that kind of helps keep down the number of TikToks that we still have to go through. I apologize if the Monday video wasn't great. It's just been one of those days. I'm recording this a little bit later, and there's a bunch of smoke to the point where that you can see ash floating in the air from wildfires, and it has fucked me up a little bit. I'm feeling a little bit better now that I've had some water to drink and I'm sitting down, but I suddenly got really exhausted and my fucking balance was so off for a bit. Like, I kept falling into stuff. I could not stay. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just the smoke and stuff made me really tired because my body doesn't tolerate it well. I don't know. But that was not fun. So I figured while I'm sitting down stuff, I'd respond to more of Fat Doctor UK. So without further ado, let's get into it.
I delivered a webinar earlier on this week all about joint pain, specifically weight-inclusive care of people with joint pain. I covered quite a few things, including fibromyalgia and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which I will do 2 separate videos about because they're sort of worth a video each. But I also covered your classic joint pain, so soft tissue injuries, ligaments and sprains, and arthritis, whether it be inflammatory arthritis like rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis, which is probably the thing that I focus the most on. A lot of people think that osteoarthritis is just wear and tear, and they use this whole too much excess weight on the joints causes arthritis. That's a very limited and sort of misinformed view. First of all, it's not wear and tear. Okay, so what happens is that we all sustain damage to our cartilage. People who run, people who exercise, people who walk, whatever you're doing, you're sustaining small amounts of damage to your cartilage all the time.
No one's arguing that even fit people are causing damage to their cartilage in small ways all the time. That's why they call it wear and tear. Typically, osteoarthritis, at least even just a couple of generations ago, I believe, was primarily seen in seniors. Occasionally it was seen in younger people, but I think it's trending upward now. I need to double check that, so don't quote me on that, but if we're talking about osteoarthritis, saying that it's wear and tear, and then her saying that no matter what activity you do, you're doing small damage to your cartilage all the time, those are not, those complement each other. Saying small damage of cartilage over time, which would eventually lead to a disease, would be, in layman's terms, wear and tear, wouldn't it?
Specifically in your weight-bearing joints like your hips and your knees and your ankles. And what happens is your body naturally repairs itself. So the repair processes that take place in your cartilage for many people actually improve symptoms. So a lot of people who exercise find that their joint pains get better. But some people can't cope with those repair processes. So instead of improving things, what happens is they get long-term damage to their joints. And what you see classically on X-ray is thinning of the joint space, new bone formation, which we call sometimes osteophytes, and inflammation of the membrane of the joint capsule, or synovium.
So, okay, clearly I should have let her finish initially, and I may still be shooting myself in the foot by not letting her finish now, but I still feel the need to... Granted, I'm not a doctor. I can only talk about my personal experiences with this. That I always assumed that when your joints felt better when you were exercising, it's because you built up the muscle around that joint which supported it better. And I only say this because I went through a series of, it was 9 months worth of physical therapy due to a workplace injury where I learned I was hypermobile. And their big thing was building up the muscle around my affected joints in ways that wouldn't like continually aggravate the muscle that was, because it was, so hypermobility, the way it was explained to me, is that your joints bend too far, but your muscles don't stretch further. So when your joint goes too far, it's overstretching the muscle and causing these micro tears where inflammation gets in. And by strengthening the muscles around, you're creating the muscles that are a little bit more rigid and can control the joint a little bit better. So that way it doesn't overextend so much and tear the muscle. That was my understanding of it. So kind of taking that information that I got from my physical therapist, I assumed that the working out and stuff, the reason why your joints felt better wasn't necessarily the healing. I mean, I guess it could be the healing process, because isn't the way muscles work is that they break down, like working out causes your muscles to like break down or something, or strain, and then they are built back up through the healing process, which creates bigger muscles and generally more strength. And then there's the people that, I don't know, it would help me a lot if she cited something.
Jovial capsule. So why do some people struggle with this repair process, whereas others actually benefit from it? The answer is we don't know. But there is definitely a genetic predisposition, no question. There's also evidence that chronic inflammation can cause this problem. And before everybody goes, oh, but being fat causes chronic inflammation. No, being fat is associated with chronic inflammation. There's no evidence to prove that the fat itself causes that chronic inflammation. Osteoarthritis.
That again, it feels like she's really trying to hammer hard the correlation does not equal causation stuff without at least acknowledging that while it may not directly cause it, it could be a contributing factor. You know what I mean? Like, it could be a contributing factor. It's not... The fact that I'm hypermobile in and of itself does not cause more injuries. However, me doing the same things as other people, not paying attention to my form, and the exercises that I pick it up, so my joints, picking something heavy up, extend further than a normal person's, with that added weight in my hand. The injury I had was in my elbows, so my elbows and wrists. And so when I pick up something heavy, and naturally when you pick up something that's a little too heavy for you, you don't keep like a great lifting form, and you might lose that form a little bit. Because I'm hypermobile, my form will extend further than the average person's, causing a greater stretch and tear of the muscle. So while my hypermobility does not in and of itself create injury, it is a contributing factor to me experiencing more injuries than the average person. So just because something doesn't directly cause something doesn't mean that it can't be a contributing factor. And quite frankly, again, this is someone that deals with hypermobility. For me, once I get above 190, like, I notice a distinct difference in how my joints hold up, especially like my hips and back will just not do well. I had serious inflammation in my hips and a lot of back pain when I was right before I started this channel, and I was approaching 200 again. Thankfully I didn't get there, but I was at like 198 I think when I started this weight loss journey. My back and hips were fucking killing me. So yes, sometimes the added weight and the added stress, while the weight itself does not directly cause it, the added stress of moving with that extra weight every day can aggravate things.
At an early age tends to happen to people who have had serious injuries to their joints. So you see it in a lot of athletes. So when people say being fat is bad for your joints, that is a very ignorant assumption to make. It shows your basic lack of understanding of how osteoarthritis works. Our load-bearing joints are designed to repair themselves. In some people, this is not the case, but we don't
Okay, I'm sorry, but that your load-bearing joints are designed to repair themselves. The entire human body is designed to repair itself. That's how we survive. That's how you recover from illness and injury. And yeah, sometimes medical intervention is needed if your body can't fight off an infection itself. But oftentimes, even with general infections, your body can fight off for itself. That doesn't mean that the body is a perpetually, under all circumstances, just can continue to heal itself. I think that's why when people get older, they can't heal themselves as well because their body has been healing themselves for a lifetime and it can't do it as well anymore. So it's not this perpetual thing. So wouldn't that stand to say that if you are heavier and you are causing a bit more, the added weight is causing just a little bit more damage to your cartilage, your body's having to work more and more often to heal itself. So therefore, aren't you, like, again, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a medical scientist, so I can't say this for sure. This is based off my understanding of how the body works. But to me, it seems like the body has a somewhat finite healing ability in both terms of how much it can heal based on severity and how much it can heal over time. And so if it's been healing more severe damage to the cartilage over time because of your extra weight, eventually won't it just like not be able to keep up? And that's similar to how we see like people who are older tend to get sick more often and are more vulnerable because they have been healing themselves over a lifetime and there's been added damage to the body and it just can't keep up anymore. And this is my understanding.
Understand why this happens to some people and not others. Don't forget that osteoarthritis happens to thin people too. So
also, now that I think about it, she keeps talking about osteoarthritis, and there's a chance that can't you just have joint pain without it being linked to a specific disease? I don't know. Like I don't know. I thought there was like joint pain, like generalized joint pain doesn't necessarily have to meet the criteria of an actual disease. If there's any doctors watching this, can you let me know? Like, can you just have joint pain without it being connected to a specific disease? Or no, if you have joint pain, it's connected to like a specific condition. Because I don't know. And I tried to look it up and I couldn't get like a definitive answer. So let me know. Also, she keeps making this thing about, we don't know what causes and your joints are designed to heal themselves and stuff. I do wish that it doesn't have to be like this peer-reviewed study every time. If she could just point to something where she's talking about how the joints work or something, just so we can read it so we're not taking her word for it each time, that would be nice. Like, even if I'm not even necessarily looking for a peer-reviewed article for this particular situation, just some form of evidence, even if it was like Mayo Health Clinic type thing or whatever UK well-known hospital or something pointing to this would help, because there's something about how she's saying it that is not, it kind of reads like she's half making it up. I don't know for sure because I don't have anything to evaluate other than what she's saying. So let's move on. Wait, did I get to the end?
Just stop blaming it on your weight. I delivered a weight. So if you're living in a larger body and you have joint pain, you almost inevitably have been told to lose weight. And if you're hoping for any kind of treatment, especially surgical treatment, and for some of you, even just a referral to an orthopedic surgeon, you're told that you have to lose weight. So I wanted to find out what the research says. Is there any evidence that losing weight improves joint pain? First thing I found was that BMI is not a very good measure of whether people are going to develop arthritis, whether people are going to be symptomatic with their arthritis, and whether people will recover from surgical intervention of their arthritis. That's because the recent evidence says it's all about lean muscle.
Okay, I'm sorry, but no, if you're saying the first thing I found, where did you find this thing? Where did you find, because she's not even referencing her website at this point. So where did you find this thing? I would like to know. I would like to take a look at this and see what it says and see what the discussion was, what they were basing it on, what was the parameters of how they came to this conclusion.
Or skeletal muscle mass. And studies have shown that sarcopenic obesity, which is basically people who have a lot of fat and no muscle, are at the highest risk of developing problems with arthritis.
That's a lot of obese people. There's a lot of people that are morbidly obese. We see it with a lot of FAs where I'm sorry, and this is where we go, focusing on joyful movement doesn't necessarily work. Sometimes building muscle for the sake of building muscle is good. A lot of obese people don't necessarily have a great amount of muscle.
The problem is that when you lose weight, you will inevitably lose lean muscle mass. And a lot of the studies that looked at weight...
I wish you would go into that a little bit more, because that confuses me. I know that you can lose muscle mass when you're losing a substantial amount of weight, like on my 600-pound life, because your body doesn't have to work so hard to hold up that level of weight anymore. But shouldn't weight training help combat that?
Weight loss prior to surgery showed that actually there was a significant muscle mass loss, about 25 to 30%. Now, the gym bros and the so-called fitness experts are going to say, yeah, but you can prevent that from happening. Yeah, first of all, you can't prevent it from happening. You can reduce it, but you can't prevent it. And second of all, that's very challenging if you've got arthritis, and exercise is difficult for you because you're limited in how much you can move your body.
So not saying that it's not difficult, but I believe that's what water aerobics and water activities are for, to kind of help with the activity and keeping your muscle levels up while reducing stress on your joints. And that whole, you can't prevent it, you can reduce it, but you can't prevent it. I don't know enough to talk on that. This is a little outside of any frame of reference that I really have, but it seems like maybe if you did it enough, you would be able to, completely prevent it, shouldn't you? But anyway, let's see what else she has to say.
So the studies have shown that dieting is not good for you because of the loss of lean muscle mass, especially just prior to surgery. You're actually much better off trying to build up your muscle mass. So going to see a physical therapist rather than going on a diet prior to surgery.
Okay, but, oh my god, it feels like she's talking in circles a little bit. Can't you do both? If you go to a physical therapist and let's say you just focus on eating a little bit better, or what if you lose weight just naturally while building up your lean muscle mass? How she makes it sound like any dieting, any weight loss before the surgery would be bad. But if you are working out, focusing on building up your lean muscle mass, then since that would improve your recovery rate from a surgery related to your arthritis, then wouldn't building up the lean muscle mass, and as a result of building up the lean muscle mass, because muscle burns more calories, and let's say you just naturally lose a little bit of weight along with that, so diet along with the weight training or physical therapy or whatever would be the most beneficial, wouldn't it? Just from her, I have nothing to evaluate because she's not showing me anything. I can't, I really wish she would give the study, because I would like to, because I would bet money, I would put money down that they would recommend a combination of weight loss with muscle training to build up the muscle to help support whatever surgery you're doing on that joint, and then reduce of general mass to alleviate the pressure that's going to be put on the affected area, right? Wouldn't that make sense?
There were a couple of studies that were done on patients who were undergoing knee replacements that looked at the benefits of dieting prior to surgery and weight loss prior to surgery. What they found was no statistical significance between the diet group and the control group.
I really would like to see this. I would like to see what she's referencing. I don't know what she's referencing. I don't know. There's nothing in the comments. It just seems to be people agreeing with her. I don't get it. I need to see the study Because you say there's no statistical significance. Did they find anything else? Was there anything noteworthy from that study? I wish I could look at it myself.
No difference prior to the operation, so after the weight loss, but prior to the operation. No difference after the operation, and no difference a year later either. And when I talk about difference, I'm talking about quality of life index, I'm talking about knee mobility, and I'm talking about knee function. So all.
So the thing is, though, is that she says that when I'm talking about quality of life, I'm talking about knee function, I'm talking about, were these the parameters of the study, or is this what you're just talking about? Because you say no statistical significance, and maybe it's both. Again, without the study, I can't verify what she's saying. So, I don't know. I feel like this feels like she's leaving a piece out. Because she kind of was talking about, it's really difficult for people to bring up their muscle mass and stuff when they have arthritis, but bringing up the muscle mass would help, not dieting. So it's like it feels like she's changing her perspective almost mid-sentence partway through to match what the point she's trying to make. And then at the same time, she keeps referencing the study that she doesn't cite.
Three of those things. What they did find is a year after knee replacement surgery, the quality of life index, mobility scores and function scores improved massively in both groups, thus demonstrating that having your knee surgically repaired when you have a severe form of arthritis benefits you no matter what size you are.
Okay, but I need to know was everyone involved in the sampling or whoever was involved in this study? Did they all receive physical therapy? Did they all what was their weight after a year? I'm very curious about that. What was their weight after a year? Because you say that she was talking about weight loss prior to surgery and there was no statistical significance. Well, after surgery, did they end up losing weight? Did they end up losing weight, and were those that lost more weight, did they have more favorable outcomes? I don't know I can't even feel like I can't even get a good idea of the parameters of this study just from what she's talking about, and it's driving me nuts that she doesn't so much as give us an author name.
So if you're being denied surgery based on your BMI, then I suggest you show those people the studies that I've linked to this video, because it's bullshit and you deserve.
Okay, so apparently she had linked them at one point. I see nothing. Did she go in and just, why would she go, why would they go in and it's almost like they would have had to go through every video and take out their references. Why? Like, why would you do that unless they never posted it to begin with?
Better. So, time for some facts. Your individual weight is determined predominantly by your genetics. That is what the evidence tells us.
Okay, I have a question for this then. My sister and I are roughly the same height, and yet I'm a good 50 pounds heavier than she is. Why is that? Why can there be an entire family of obese people and then like the one kid that's rail thin? Why is that? Why? If I would love to see, at this point I really want someone to just do a study just to get this fucking out of the way, get a collection of people that are the same gender, roughly the same height, and put them all on and let's also just take out medical issues, like try to even out any underlying medical issues as well. Just cause I'm curious, and then another one can be done later with a variety of disabilities to see if that also affected things. But for now, well, just a collection of people that are the same gender, the same height, put on the same diet, and made to have roughly the same amount of activity. I am curious to see what the results were. I'm not saying that genetics can't play a factor in your weight. I think if all of those parameters were met, we'd still see somewhere between 5 to 20 pound difference among those individuals. I could see that, but I don't think it would cause like 100 pounds worth of difference.
And if you want to know more about it, don't ask me, ask a guy named Giles Yeo, Y-E-O, Yeo. He works out of Cambridge University and he and his team are the experts. Now, a lot of people take issue with this because they say, if that's the case, how comes society has changed over the last 100 years? And it's a fair point. So I suggest you look up the term epigenetics. In a nutshell, our environment and to a degree our behaviour can change the way that our genes work. We know that childhood trauma.
Okay, so just a quick note, because I was really interested in epigenetics back in university. Granted, they still know more about it than I do because I only know some cursory information, but the one thing I can say about epigenetics is that it is still a new field. We don't even know everything about it, so to point to it as if like this is the proof when it is a really new field still just feels disingenuous.
That has an impact on us. We know that a multitude of environmental factors have an impact on us. That's what we call the social determinants of health. And we also know that chronic dieting has an impact on our genetics too. Hope that helps.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to see this. 23andMe tells me that genetically I should be of average weight. I'm on paper morbidly obese. And unfortunately they're going to equate it with epigenetics in that due to factors beyond their control, they went from being average weight to morbidly obese, and none of it is their fault. None of it could possibly be their eating habits. And I don't mean to put all of that on this person. I don't know what their channel, I don't know what they say, I don't know anything. This is just, it drives me nuts.
One thing I've noticed is that people really struggle with a lot of the information that I give out because they don't understand the difference between population-based risk and individual risk. Most of the evidence that we have about fatness is based on epidemiological studies, so population-based studies. And these studies calculate population-based risks. And whilst that's useful for many things, they're not particularly useful for calculating individual risk because it goes without saying that individuals are unique. I've noticed that...
Okay, just because I can kind of tell where they're going with this. Statistically, you are not a unicorn. All right? Statistically, you are not a medical unicorn that the epidemiological studies would not apply to. You are far more likely to be average than you are to be unique in terms of this. In terms of actually a lot of things, that's my perspective. I'm not going to go too far into that, but in general, for better or worse, we are likely average. Look in the mirror, chances are you're average. Unless you have a super rare disease or, I don't know, something has come up during medical testing that makes you an exception to this rule, it's best to assume you are average.
A lot of people like to use population-based studies to essentially beat fat people over the head, to blame us and to shame us and to tell us that we're all going to die early, when actually there's no way you can infer individual risk by reading a population-based study.
Okay, I agree with this. For instance, that whole talk about people with histories of EDs need to be approached differently, and so therefore taking a strictly population-based information and trying to apply it to everyone probably doesn't work. That being said, it's still unlikely that you are a unicorn that trying to go on, not even trying to go on a diet, just simply changing your diet to include fruits, vegetables, lean meats, whole foods, and it focuses on satiety. I'm not saying that you're focusing on the calories. You can take calories completely out of it. Just focus on eating fruits, vegetables, lean meats, whole grains, and that sort of thing. And it's likely to work for you, and there's not likely to be a huge risk there. That's a fair statement.
Shouldn't be treating people like statistics. That's not how we practice medicine. One thing.
Oh, I love this satire. Must be. Alright, so before we continue on, we jump from September 18th to January 2nd. So, They were apparently off for almost 4 months and then came back. They got a haircut, which means we're starting to head into their angrier phase. So that should be interesting.
Just start a diet today. Because if you did, chances are you're going to end up a lot heavier than when you first started within the next.
That is such an asshole thing to do. Someone's starting a diet, someone's trying to do better for themselves, and you're like, you're gonna fail. Honey, you're just gonna fail, so don't even try. It's such an asshole thing to do. Ah.
Next 5 years. January is to the diet industry what Valentine's Day is to Hallmark. It's just a big excuse to sell you stuff. Now,
you don't have to buy the stuff to still eat healthier, to try to lose weight, to do better for yourself. You don't have to buy any of the gadgety, gimmicky bullshit. You don't have to. I am guilty of buying Fitbits because I like them, and I like keeping track of my activity level because I am naturally a very sedentary person. It doesn't have to be that way. You can lose weight without the calorie trackers, without the fitness trackers, without any of the diet food, without any of that. You can still lose weight. It's hard. To me, it's harder that way. But it's still perfectly possible. I think some of the, what they would refer to as diet industry bullshit that's made just to sell you stuff is helpful, like Fitbits, like MyFitnessPal, those general things. But you can even use MyFitnessPal for free.
Clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with gaining weight, but chances are that's not what people have been selling you for the last few years. It's not like Noom is suddenly telling people that they're going to gain weight as a result of starting their Noom diet plan, but they know that chances are you will. Chances are not only will you gain the weight back, but you'll come back to them when you do, you'll pay them more money, and you'll even blame yourself rather than them for the diet failing. Look, it's a clever business plan, I'll give them that, but let's take a little look at the evidence, shall we? Very thorough literature review from 2007 shows that diets are not the answer. Fact.
Literature review. Keep in mind this is a literature review, so it would review things from God knows when up until 2007. And not only that, but 2007 was 15 fucking years ago. Not very compelling evidence right there. I would assume that given that there's been an obesity epidemic, that a lot more studies have been done since 2007. And furthermore, this is a literature review, not a study, meaning that they don't bring anything new to the table. They're just looking through the literature. I don't get the feeling that they're going to tell me what the parameters were for this literature review, because typically with a good literature review, you wouldn't look back more than 10 years. But even let's say they're looking back 10 years, that puts us at 1997. That's really fucking old data. So this is not compelling. Finally they cite something, and this is not compelling evidence.
They showed that between 1/3 and 2/3 of people will regain more weight than they lost on their diets. And this study from 2011 asked, does dieting make you fat? And the answer was yes. They looked at over 4,000 twins aged between 16 and 25, and they found that dieting accelerates the process of weight. They all...
Okay, wait. Okay, does dieting make you fat? A twin study. Oh, this is gonna be fucking fun. Okay, so I did get this through National Library of Medicine, pubmed.gov. It's just the abstract, which isn't as much as I would like, but everywhere I've looked, in order to get the full article, there's a $35 paywall. So we're just going to take a quick look at the abstract and see what we see real quick. The objective was to investigate whether a paradoxical weight gain association with dieting is better related to genetic propensity to weight gain than to weight loss episodes themselves. Interesting. So this isn't talking about lifestyle factors. It's talking about just genetic weight gain versus weight gain associated with weight loss episodes. So potential here already is that someone tries to lose weight, doesn't do it in a sustainable way, ends up going far to the other side of bad habits, which leads them to a worse place, not because the diet was bad, but because they couldn't adhere to it. They didn't approach it in a sustainable way. Because it's just talking about then weight loss episodes, meaning not ongoing efforts of weight loss, but like a weight loss episode, meaning that for just one single prescribed period of time, and then the result of that was later weight gain. So we'll see. So subjects included 4,129 individual twins from population-based Finn Twins 16 study, 90% of twins born in Finland, 1975 to 1979. Weight and height were obtained from longitudinal studies at 16, 17, 18, and 25. And a number of lifetime intentional weight loss episodes of more than... Weight and height were obtained from longitudinal surveys, not studies, at 16, 17, 18, and 25. And number of lifetime intentional weight loss episodes of more than 5 kilograms at 25 years. So they only followed the participants to 25 years. Again, I can't see what kind of diets these people were trying, but if they were trying diets at 16, 17, 18, and then up through 25 years, chances are they were going about it in a very dumb way, because you don't know what you don't know at those ages. Already, I would have preferred it if this was people, preferably over the age of 30, I would have liked to see, who maybe try more sustainable forms of weight loss, rather than if they're doing weight loss attempts often at 16, 17, 18, 25. I can only go based on my own experience, but it's often like unsustainable ways of weight loss that, would make you go in the other realm. Also, these students would be at a very stressful point in their lives, actually, now that I think about it, because they are finishing high school. They have to worry about, this was 1975. No, that was when they were born, which puts them in the late 90s when this happens. So they could and it's Finland, where I believe education is free, so they could still be finishing up high school, worried about college. And then college can be pretty stressful, especially the first time through. It's not uncommon to gain weight. The freshman 15 is a thing. And then if you're trying to do this really intense weight loss period, and then maybe during the summer you try to lose weight, and then you go back to school and you go back to your old habits. Result: intentional weight loss predicted accelerated weight gain and risks of overweight. The odds of becoming overweight, body mass index of 25, it just says greater than 25, by 25 years were significantly greater in subjects with one or two or more intentional weight loss compared to subjects with no intentional weight loss. Also, if we're taking a look at intentional weight loss versus unintentional weight loss, it was more common in those that were doing intentional weight loss versus unintentional weight loss. Was their starting point the same? Did they start out in the overweight category to begin with? In MZ pairs discordant for intentional weight loss, co-twins with at least one intentional weight loss were 0.4 kilograms heavier at 25 than their non-dieting co-twins. No difference in baseline BMIs. In DZ pairs, co-twins with intentional weight loss. So wait. I believe MZ is... So these weren't all identical twins. I think MZ is like mono something, I think. Don't quote me on this, because I don't have the ability to see what the MZ is supposed to stand for, but I want to say that's like mono something, where they're basically identical twins. They came from one egg and split, versus dang it, I can't remember, but I think DZ stands for twins that were separated, or like were two eggs that were fertilized separately. Co-twins with intentional weight loss gained progressively more weight than non-dieting co-twins. At 16, at 25. Our conclusion, our results suggest that frequent intentional weight loss reflects susceptibility to gain weight, rendering dieters prone to future weight gain. The results from MZ pairs discordant with intentional weight loss suggest that dieting itself may induce a small subsequent weight gain independent of genetic factors. So I see what they're saying here. These people are awfully young. Like, I kind of have a problem, and it's hard because I don't know the methods of the study. Were they paired with doctors? Is this just based on their own attempts? It seems like it's just kind of based on their own attempts at weight loss. There's some issues I have with this. So, one, I think that the test subjects, the fact that it caps out at 25, there are so many life events happening that stress eating could have been a big thing, especially for certain people that weren't handling the stress very well. Maybe some of the twins made some different decisions that caused stress for one twin than another, and so they gained a little bit more weight through maybe stress eating or less activity. We're not getting a look at how they define like a weight loss episode. Was this Weight Watchers? Was this a prescribed from working with a nutritionist and a doctor? Was this lifestyle changes, attempts at just small changes to improve their lifestyle? Again, 25, it's so young. It's so young. And the fact that you start at 16, you can still, especially given that this was, I believe this was, were these all females? No, they weren't, because they mentioned males. But regardless, for either gender, I think that it's natural to still be, especially if you're starting out from like a healthy weight, it's natural to still kind of shift and maybe gain a little bit during this time, given that you're heading into, like, I think it's around like the most fertile you are as both male and female. I don't know. Actually, don't quote me on that one. I don't know. But like, I know that my body still changed a lot independent of weight from 16 to 25. My body has changed far less from 25 to 30 than it did from 20 to 25. I have a problem with the ages that they've used here. And on top of that, there were, like, what were some other mitigating factors that could have contributed to this? What was controlled for this study and what was not? It's so hard because I don't have access to the full study.
Found that dieting accelerates the process of weight. They also found that this happened in what they call a dose-response fashion. In other words, the more you diet, the more likely you are to gain weight in the future. And since this was a twin study, they were able to show that it wasn't genetics, but the diet itself that caused the weight gain. So look, just like Valentine's Day is the shop's way of selling you cards and gifts and restaurants' way of jacking up their prices for a night, whilst simultaneously stigmatizing all the single people who are supposedly quote-unquote undesirable and can't get a date. The diet industry uses January as an excuse to sell you stuff that you don't need, knowing full well it won't work. And they use weight stigma to guilt you into doing this. Do yourself a favour this January. Ditch the diet and save some money.
I disagree. Even from looking at that, I have a real problem with the ages that they were used. So if you're over the age of 25, I say give it a shot and don't do a crash diet, do a full-on lifestyle change where maybe instead of just focusing on completely revamping everything that you're doing, start with cutting out some soda or maybe the donuts or whatever bad habit you really have. Start with toning down that bad habit, cutting it out altogether if you can. Start there. See where you get.
You just start an exercise program this January. It's a good thing, right? Because everybody knows exercise is good for your health. I actually disagree with this statement. Because of the ambiguity of the language, you haven't defined good and you haven't defined health. So you don't actually know if that statement is true. I'm not saying that exercise is bad for you. We all know that exercise has many, many benefits, including improving your cardiovascular health, helping you to recover from an injury, and improving your mental health. But before we actually determine whether or not exercise is good for you as an individual, we have to define exactly what we mean by that. For example, are you aware of all of the risks associated with exercise? Wait, there are risks associated with exercise?
There's risks associated with everything. If you drive a car, you're more likely to die. There's, doesn't stop us from driving fucking cars. And what was it? And it's not that driving the car itself is what, increases it. It's that you're operating a very large vehicle going at high speeds with a bunch of other vehicles in the same area. It's the same way that, what was it? There's this statistic going around that you are most likely to be in a car accident within 10 miles of your home. But the reason for that, and that sounds really scary, but the reason for that is because you drive most within 10 miles of your home. So there's far more opportunities for accidents within 10 miles of your home than outside of 10 miles of your home. Does that make sense? Same thing with exercise. You are more likely to sustain injury through exercise than you are sitting on the couch, simply because by moving with exercise, you have more opportunities to hurt yourself.
Yep. There are actually quite a few risks that you might not be aware of. First of all, exercise can induce high blood pressure in certain individuals. And there are studies to show that in those individuals, people who are exercising regularly and have hypertension related to exercise have a higher risk of developing cardiovascular events. And we're talking about heart attacks and strokes and things like that. Also, check out this study up here called The Dark Side of Exercise. Vigorous exercise compared to moderate intensity exercise carries a 5 to 7 times higher possibility of unexpected death.
Okay, I gotta see. This is an open access text. Sudden cardiac death, the dark side of exercise. Okay, we have all those people. When was this published? Article info. This was 2016. Okay. Abstract. The authors report the case of an apparently healthy 57-year-old male who died suddenly and unexpectedly while running on the treadmill in the gymnasium. Postmortem examination revealed the something cardiopathy. Attention is drawn to the risk of exercise, especially if strenuous and non-regular. Interesting, especially if strenuous and non-regular, meaning that you go from 0 to 60 on your exercise. You don't normally exercise and all of a sudden you're trying to run a marathon. Triggering sudden cardiac death in adults, namely middle-aged or elderly, with or without known underlying pathology. But, just in this abstract, they are reporting specifically on the case, so this is a case study, which means that it's not necessarily, it's something to consider and it's something to look into. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, it's just a case study. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily generalizable. And even if it is, if it can be generalized, the way they've generalized it is risk of exercise, especially if strenuous and non-regular, meaning that it's strenuous exercise that you don't normally do, and it is more likely in middle-aged or elderly. So if you've gone through your life not exercising, not taking care of yourself, and then suddenly go into a strenuous exercise that your body isn't used to, it could trigger a cardiac event. History. A 57-year-old male with no relevant personal or familial pathological antecedents and no addiction habits died unexpectedly while running on the gymnasium treadmill. Unsuccessful resuscitation maneuvers were performed for 20 minutes. Afterwards, witnesses told that he had been practicing an excessive physical activity for about an hour, and his wife reported that for 2 days he had been exercising far beyond the usual. So this isn't even just a single event. From the sounds of it, he didn't normally exercise this much. He was practicing excessive physical activity for over an hour, when for the past 2 days he had been exercising far more than normal at 57. While, yes, this shows that exercise can potentially be an issue, this was done excessively and in ways that his body wasn't used to. The discussion and conclusion, we're just going to read this since it's fairly small. This whole thing is actually fairly small. So I already read the history of the case report. We'll read the autopsy findings real quick. Body of a middle-aged male with normal height and weight for age and gender. So normal height and weight, meaning that he was within the healthy range of a BMI, just so that way it's noted. External habitus examination showed no traumatic or significant lesions. Internal habitus examination revealed generalized and severe vascular congestion of tissues and organs. The heart presented increased weight, normal shape, no congenital malformations, and in section macroscopic white and for myocardial foci areas, and white yellowish eccentric something lesions, including 50 to 75% of the coronary arteries lumen. Organ samples were produced for microscopic examination. They were fixed in 10% formalin and embedded in paraffin. Okay, so this is getting... I'm stumbling over a lot of this. So it looks like this is just saying how they got these. Epidemiological setting. The case belongs to a series of 1,141 autopsies performed during 1 year in medico-legal institution that serves a territorial area of 29.206 square kilometers, with a population of 2,595 inhabitants. So discussion and conclusion. Physical activity, either due to profession, to hobbies, or to sport practice, is beneficial for health, leading to morbidity, cardiovascular, respiratory, endocrine, neurological, musculoskeletal, oncological reduction, and thus mortality decreases. A classic example is the study performed by Morris et al. That showed 50% less coronary artery disease in physically active professionals. This is very important when we realize that cardiac arrest and sudden death of adults, more frequent in males and increasing with age, middle-aged, elderly, are most due to cardiovascular pathology, particular atherosclerotic coronary heart disease, which ranges from 50.1% to 60% in the Western world, including Portugal. Yet, we must keep in mind that sports exercise paradox, meaning that vigorous, acute, and transient physical activity may, on the contrary, be responsible for sudden cardiac death, as happened to the victim, reported in fact strenuous when compared to moderate intensity exercise, was related to a 5 to 7 times higher possibility of unexpected death. 90% of SCD in sports occur in males, and greater than 90% of recreational athletes, matching our victim's pattern. So matching our victim's pattern, meaning that they did it excessively for an extended period of time in ways that they weren't used to. Okay. The major cause of underlying sudden cardiac death in older athletes greater than 35 years is this thing, acute and chronic, and its complications 80%, growing from percentages around 43% in the older young adults. In the present case, the mechanisms proposed for the exitus letalis are exitus letalis. I apologize, you guys. I apologize. I'm doing my best. 1, decreased blood flow due to certain scientific reasons that I'm not even going to try to pronounce and explain, because I don't have the ability to, and reduced lumen of the aging and or chronic something induced thickened wall intramyocardial arteries with the setting of physical effort would be insufficient for... It's up here, pause it if you... I'm so sorry. I've tried, I keep getting lost. This is not a great representation of my ability to read these. So in conclusion, the authors draw attention to the following important issues. 1. Individuals who practice physical activity less often and irregularly are at higher risks of sudden death than those who are regular practitioners. Okay, so that's very specific, and I love how the Fat Doctor UK glossed over that. Extreme physical activity may lead to fatal outcome, mainly in persons with cardiac pathology, even if concealed and asymptomatic. Something cardiopathy is responsible for 80% of sudden cardiac deaths in older athletes. In an era where physical status and the search for eternal youth are the priority, care must be taken by each individual per se, as well as by society as a whole and the public health system, to adequate the needs to the possibilities of each person initiating a sports activity in order to avoid sudden and unexpected fatalities, even when correct out-of-hospital resuscitating maneuvers are performed. So, to me, no financial interest or conflict of interest. So 1, this was a case study, number 1. Number 2, this person did excessive exercise far outside their normal and had, it appears from what I understand from what we've read here, seemed to have an underlying heart issue that may have been asymptomatic. So while yes, that is a risk of exercise, I would just recommend starting out slow. It would just help in general avoid injury. So let's watch that part again real quick.
Here, called the dark side of exercise. Vigorous exercise compared to moderate intensity exercise carries a 5 to 7 times higher possibility of unexpected death. And sudden cardiac...
But if you'll see that it was related to the sudden cardiac death events, often which we saw were related to like 80% to this one specific type of issue.
Death in athletes has been described on multiple occasions. The introduction to this study, a paradox of sport is that in addition to the undisputed health benefits of physical activity, vigorous exertion may transiently increase the risk of acute cardiac events.
Okay, but vigorous is significant. In order to reach a vigorous state of exercise, your heart rate has to be elevated pretty high. I have a hard time. I go running and stuff. I have a hard time reaching like peak performance, which is what a lot of athletes have to reach when they're training. So I have a hard, like you have to be going hard to reach, I think, vigorous levels.
It's not all. It's well known that compulsive exercise or exercise addiction is linked to eating disorders, specifically anorexia. And exercise addiction is a well-known mental health condition that has...
So is binge eating and food addictions. Like, I don't mean to go in this what about spiral or anything, but there's literally risk and potential addiction for anything that anyone enjoys doing.
Lots of negative impacts on both your mental and physical health. Finally, check out all of these sports-related injuries that are linked to early onset arthritis. Look, I'm not disputing the fact that exercise has many, many benefits, but we also have to be aware of the risks. We should remember that whenever we're making choices like this, it needs to be an individualized choice.
Okay, but also the thing is that whenever anyone, like it's put on every exercise program out there, consult your physician before starting this because of situations like with the undiagnosed heart issue or the asymptomatic heart issue, because it's like, I want to do this thing. Let's say you want to do high intensity interval training and so your heart rate's going to be raised really high. I would think that your doctor, especially if you're middle-aged or older, your doctor's going to want to check a few things to make sure that that's not going to be a significant issue to you. So the issue isn't exercise. It's 1, going too hard, too fast, too quickly, and 2, perhaps maybe not consulting your doctor.
Weigh up the risks and the benefits. Consider where you are emotionally. Physically, do you have a physical condition that limits your ability to exercise? Is exercise going to make it any worse? Things like that. Don't be bullied into taking on an exercise program in January.
So I agree you shouldn't be bullied into an exercise program, but it's certainly not going to hurt you to start slowly And maybe just, you don't even have to start a full-on exercise program. Maybe you just start taking walks more.
I'm going to ignore the willpower part of this comment and focus on this idea that calories in equals calories out, and that all you need to do to lose weight is to have a calorie deficit and do some strengthening exercise, because this is a myth that has been debunked on multiple occasions, and it's important that people realise this.
You say that's been debunked on multiple occasions, and yet, while you could provide all sorts of evidence of varying quality when it came to like the exercise programs, I find it interesting that they can give all sorts of evidence when it suits them, but then for when they're doing this general fat acceptance rhetoric, not a single study to be found.
The idea that energy in equals energies out is based on a principle of physics, the laws of thermodynamics, and it doesn't really apply to the body because the body is far more complicated than an experiment in a vacuum. You can see from this very complicated diagram behind me, there are actually so many different factors that lead to weight gain.
Not denying that there's multiple factors that can lead to weight gain. Diseases, body makeup, habits, environment, what have you. That doesn't negate the basic first law of thermodynamics. It doesn't. I'm sorry, but it doesn't.
Let's start with genetics. As you can see, loads of genes have already been identified that are responsible for weight gain. And some studies suggest that your genetics control your weight in the same way that they control your height. Now, no one has ever told me that it's my fault I'm only 5'2", but I'm constantly being told that it's my fault that I weigh as much as I do.
Oh, and look, an actual citation. Experiences of adult obesity, a systematic review of plausible mechanisms and meta-analysis of cross-sectional studies. So because I want to be able to go into this, we're actually going to start the next video with this one. I am out of time. I thought this was going to be a final quick review video, but now I want to be able to take a look at this study, see if I can find it. I'm very tired now, and I've been talking for a while and I can feel my voice starting to go. So instead, we're going to start the next video with this one. I think I was wrong about only needing 2 more parts after this one because we're only on January 3rd. I'm going to end it here. Let me know what you thought about this video, and we will continue next week. My God, they're going to take up so much time to get through all of their TikToks. Holy God. Might take, after the next one, we might take a small break, look at a different fat acceptance person, and then maybe come back to FatDoctorUK. I don't want to forget about looking at this study, though, so we're going to do at least 1 more week of FatDoctorUK and then maybe take a small break. So, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.